Gary Moore with PhoneSuite, continuing on with our ongoing series of informational webinars regarding voice technologies, specifically for hospitality. In this series, we are presenting several topics about today's telecommunications technology to keep our audience up to date on what is available to hoteliers and their suppliers. Presenting today, as always, is Frank Melville, CEO of PhoneSuite. Frank is uniquely qualified in that he has grown up in the hotel business at his family's hotel in Aspen, Colorado, and has been designing hospitality phone systems specifically since 1992. This series continues. You can get recordings of this series from our website, phonesuite.com. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank for today's presentation.
Let's get started. Just to give a little bit of credibility to our company, a little bit about PhoneSuite. We've been a hospitality PBX provider since 1998, and that's over 15 years. Company's been around 25 years, but we've been focusing exclusively on hospitality for 15 years now. And we just shipped system number 4,000, and that's pretty good for being the relative new guy on the block in a market with a 900-pound gorilla in it and 50,000 hotels in the country. We've sent systems to 4,000 of them. We are now preferred, endorsed, or approved by most, and soon to be all, we believe, major brands in the United States and North America. And that includes the brands you know, Best Western, Choice Properties, Wyndham. We are now Hilton Interface approved, soon to be Marriott Interface approved, and continue moving on up. And finally, we offer not just traditional TDM PBX systems, the kind that have been around for decades, but also now the most modern all SIP and IP PBX systems, whether hosted or premise-based, and we're going to be talking more about that today, but we do offer everything here that you'll see today and more. All right, our cost analysis webinars. We've already done one, and that was a comparison of the SIP phones versus analog phones in the guest room. That's now posted on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, PhoneSuite YouTube channel, and you can link to that from our website, phonesuite.com. Today we're going to be talking about hosted versus premise-based systems and again, a cost analysis. Hosted, talking about monthly payment versus outright purchase of the system, the premise-based solution. We'll get into that a little bit more. And next, we'd love to hear your ideas. If you have an idea for something you would like to see in the telecommunications for hospitality area that involves cost analysis, let us know. Maybe SIP trunking versus regular trunking, for example. Sales@phonesuite.com is a great place to send that email. Okay, let's get started here. I want to start out with just a little bit of a view of what a traditional premise-based PBX looks like. Everything that is needed is in this PBX inside the building, connected to the phone lines from the phone company, running the guest room phones, admin phones, property management system interface. Voicemail's in here. Attached to it is call accounting if it's not integrated into it. Auto attendant, everything that is part of the PBX. And the hosted solution is to somehow take all this PBX and move it up into the cloud so that through the internet, some mysterious hardware can be used to drive all the phones in the property management interface in the hotel, but you've moved that big PBX out of the hotel, somewhere up into the cloud, where it hooks to phone lines so you can call out of the building, obviously, and then through the internet, all of the voice traffic is carried. Now, keep in mind, the voicemail boxes, the guest directory, the call accounting, everything's up here in the cloud. Down here, you've just got the minimum hardware that you possibly need to keep the system running. When we're doing these analyses here, one simple way to think of things in terms of how things are costed is everything inside of this box that is the hotel. We're going to take the roof away, but everything inside of the box that is a hotel is something you have to pay for at the beginning, and everything up here is something that's a monthly service fee. And that's a key part of this analysis that we're going to be doing. So let's talk a little bit about the approach we're taking. We're going to review the components and architecture of some very specific solutions, very specific premise-based solution, very specific hosted-based solution, the popular ones now. We are going to first compare the typical, what I would call state-of-the-art system cost for both the premise-based hybrid and the hosted solution. And then we're going to take a look at two virtually identical systems, one premise-based controller, one cloud-based or hosted controller, and see what the cost comparison are on those. And we just want to give you a reminder, we offer both of these options. We offer premise-based, we offer a hosted solution, we offer everything in between. So we don't have an axe to grind here. We just want to help you understand the pluses and minuses and the differences in costs. The metrics that we use in doing these cost comparisons is that every property is assumed to have 100 rooms with 2 phones in every room. Every property is assumed to have 10 additional guest-facing phones, so lobby, pool, any common area phones, elevators, etc., and 8 administrative phones in the front desk console. That is the same for all the properties. In every case, we're going to just assume that the phone lines being used are identical, so we don't have to do a cost comparison on that. That's a different topic, but just assume that the net effect of the phone lines themselves, PMS interfaces, things like that is 0 in terms of difference. Everything is the same in every single configuration there. And here's something interesting. We used some popular hospitality solution competitors' pricing on all these models whenever we could instead of our own pricing. And why? Our pricing is usually 20, 30% less expensive than the competitors, but the relative pricing and the most you could pay is what you're going to see, and that gives you, I think, a good comparison. Again, our pricing can be provided to you if you want it. Also, in the analyses we're going to do here, we're going to assume that everybody needs maintenance on their hardware. Whatever it is that you had to purchase that isn't up in the cloud, about 5% of the equipment cost is going to be going into maintenance every year. All right, so let's look at a modern premise-based PBX in a little more detail than our simple graphic that showed the difference between premise-based and hosted. Here is that premise-based PBX, and it drives analog guest room phones. That's the most popular way to do it these days. But it's also, as a hybrid, it's IP enabled, and therefore can drive the SIP admin phones and interface through TCP/IP to the property management system, and even be accessible by the internet. So through the internet, technicians can get into the system and make changes and revisions. But still hooks to standard phone lines if you want it to, or SIP trunks through the internet if you want it to. And looking at a cost on something like this, again, using a very popular competitor's pricing model, the PBX hardware itself, about $7,400 to drive those 110 analog phones and the, 110 analog lines, 2 phones per room, and 1 phone, obviously, at 10 different common area locations, and the IP phones. The software license to drive all this is a package deal, and it's about $4,000. The guest room phones, again, 2 per room, so 200 plus 10 common area, $6,720, and the admin phones at about $200 a piece for 8 phones is about $1,600. A little bit of networking equipment, and the total is about $20,260 for that premise-based PBX. That's the money that you pay up front to get that PBX solution installed in your hotel. If instead you went into the most modern hosted solution, which is an all-SIP solution, and I've got up here in the cloud, we've got VoiceWare as an example here, but we're actually using a competitor's pricing, and I just threw these slides together quickly, so this still says VoiceWare. Just consider that to be an IP PBX server and a SIP trunking provider server driving through the network on the hotel property site a bunch of SIP phones. So we've got SIP guest room phones here, we've got SIP admin phones, and then the property management system interfaces. And the pricing on this, ooh, look at this. We don't have to pay anything for PBX hardware up front. Why? That's kept up in the cloud, and it's not up to us to maintain or purchase that. We don't pay anything for software licenses. Again, that's all part of this monthly hosted service. But the cost of the phones has gone up considerably, and this was addressed in our previous cost comparison webinar. You might want to take a look at that for details, but the SIP guest room phones, especially if you want 2 per room, are quite a bit more expensive. Admin phone cost is the same, but the networking cost has gone up considerably because we need a power over Ethernet switch to drive every single SIP phone, and there's quite a few PoE switches going to be needed to make this all run. So the total that you pay for what's inside the building here in order to implement one of these modern hosted all SIP solutions is about $22,000, a little bit more expensive. But in addition, you've got the monthly hosting fee, the fee for this service here to continue driving all of these phones and providing the voicemail and the PMS interface software, etc., of about $283.20 per month. And again, that's a competitor's price based on our understanding of their published pricing for a property of about this size, $283 a month. So obviously this is going to be more expensive because the hardware alone is more expensive, and then you've got to add on this $283.20 a month. So people are not doing this that often. Why? Of the expense of these SIP guest room phones. And so we thought perhaps it would be good to do a different comparison. But before we do, let's talk about the main differences between this pure premise-based with the most modern popular technology and pure hosted and SIP-based with the most modern popular current technology. The standard analog guest phones are the biggest difference. They're mass-produced, they're inexpensive, versus having to buy all SIP phones for the guest rooms, which are not yet mature in our hospitality industry, and they're not shipping a lot of them, so they're quite a bit more expensive. That's the one main difference. The second main difference is that in one approach, the premise-based, you have an outright purchase of all the technology up front, versus the hosted solution where you're buying the technology you need on site and then have recurring monthly costs for the service. And that is the main driver behind the hosted solution, and we'll learn a little bit more about that in a minute here, how it can actually work out financially. The last is that with a hosted solution, all upgrades to what drives it, the PBX hardware and the software, are free. You don't have to pay to maintain it. You don't have to pay for a new version. Anytime that software is improved in the hosted approach, you just get it for free as part of your monthly service fee. So those are the three main notable differences between a premise-based and a hosted solution. But as of right now, it sure doesn't look like the hosted solution is more effective. Well, let's do something different here. Let's instead, because we've got a variety of approaches we can take in between those two, let's configure two identical solutions where one of them is being driven locally by a premise-based IP PBX server, and the other is going to be driven through the cloud, and I'll do a cost comparison there. In this scenario here, inside of the hotel, we've still got a connection to the internet. We've got an IP PBX server. Again, VoiceWare is an IP PBX that runs on a server, and it's driving the whole system. It can interface to the phone lines or can interface through a gateway to the phone lines. And then we've got these what are called FXS gateways. These are devices that allow an IP PBX to drive inexpensive analog phones. And this is the most popular way we are seeing today of implementing an IP-based solution or an all-IP solution, whether it's hosted or premise-based. It just drives the cost down. We've still got the Power over Ethernet switch running the SIP admin phones and doing the PMS interface if it's TCP/IP or serial. And the costs on this for your 100-room hotel with two phones per room and 10 additional phones. The hardware here, which is all these gateways and the server, is about $6,150. The licenses are pretty expensive. Again, we're not using our pricing. We're using a very popular IP solution license pricing. It's about $11,000. The guest phones are back down to that same $6,700. The admin phones are still the same $1,600. And the networking is that lower price, $500, for a total of $26,000. And there is no monthly recurring cost on this because you own the server and the software, and it's up to you to maintain it. Take that exact same scenario and move that server that was down here in the property up into the cloud as a hosted solution, and things change a bit. Look at that. The hardware, well, we still need these gateways, and we still need the interface to the phone lines. So the hardware is about $4,000. Licenses drop to $0. Now we're talking. Guest phones are still that same price, so are the admin phones and networking. So we've kicked out that huge licensing price here, and we've even reduced the cost of our on-site hardware to the point where this system now only costs us $12,000 up front to get all of this in and running. But now we are a hosted solution, so that same $283.20 a month as a hosted solution fee, a monthly recurring fee, does apply to this solution. Looks a lot less expensive, doesn't it? But how does it really add up? And here we're going to look at the cost of each one of those 4 solutions, the first 2 we looked at, and then the second 2 we looked at, over 5, 10, and 15 years. And again, just as a reminder, you've got equipment you've got to purchase up front. If it's a hosted solution, you've got a monthly hosting fee, and we're going to add 5% of this number per year as a maintenance cost, whatever you paid for the upfront equipment to keep that premise-based equipment running. And if you look at it just immediately, right at 5 years, still the least expensive solution is the hybrid PBX on-premise, because we've driven that $12,000 up to $33,000 over 5 years. $283 a month is over $3,000 a year times 5 years. That's another $15,000 plus the 5% maintenance. Remember, all of these systems have 5% of the purchase price and maintenance costs. Keep in mind the non-hosted solutions, the premise-based solutions, this first one and this third one, you don't get regular free upgrades. You pay for the upgrades, obviously, but look at the difference in prices here. And the real question for you when looking at this chart, and I hope you go to this chart and review it once it's posted on the website, how long do you expect your PBX to last? Do you expect it to last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Look at that 15-year cost comparison. Even if you look at just the premise-based VoIP versus the hosted VoIP, or even 10 years, still the hosted solution, if you can get along without having regular upgrades to your software, is quite a bit less expensive to keep it on-premise than it is hosted. I'm sure that's generating some questions there. Some other considerations to you to think about now that we've looked at the pricing itself is, well, what works best for you and your hotel financially? Do you want to spend most of your money up front and then not worry about it again, just maintain it, or do you want to spend most of your money operating it as a regular operation expense? In other words, a non-capital expense, a true right to the expense, bottom line expense every month. There are reasons that people prefer to do that, even though you spend more money in the long run. The second consideration is your property ready for VoIP and SIP? Do you really have the kind of infrastructure and staff that could do a hosted solution effectively? Are your staff going to accept it, and is your property going to have to go through a lot of retrofit to make it work? Whether or not it needs retrofit, you do have some LAN infrastructure changes. You're going to have to do some things with your LAN in order to do an IP-based solution in your hotel. And the biggest question, I think, is what kind of property is it? If it's an economy hotel, I cannot imagine anything that's going to happen in the next 10 or 15 years with respect to VoIP that will be such a game changer that you are dead in the water if you didn't install an IP-based solution to begin with in an economy lodge. Now, that may not be true in the upper end, where ability to speak different languages to the guests, or ability for the guests' mobile phone to become their guest room phone. Those kinds of things are going to require an IP-based solution. But if you've got an economy property, I'm guessing that there wouldn't be any reason you'd need an IP-based solution, and a simple TDM solution would work just fine. So that's about it. Any questions? Someone's going to bring me a list of questions here, and I will start out with, well, here's the first one. How does a standard TDM system compare? Only the hybrid was shown. That's right. The first slide was only a hybrid. A standard TDM solution is even less expensive than the hybrid. You can't get a standard TDM solution hosted no matter what. It's designed the way phone systems have been in hotels for 3 or 4 decades now, with digital technology, and everything needs to be premise-based for it to run. But they should, I don't know, they'll probably be 10 to 30% less expensive than the premise-based hybrid solution. Okay, here's another question. What specific systems were used in the examples? I don't want to give names. All I can do is tell you that the premise-based solution we showed was the most popular small or 100-room hotel PBX available today, and the all-SIP hosted solution that we showed was based on I won't say they're super popular, but in terms of finding a nationally available all-SIP hosted solution, we used their published information to price that one out. And then we used those license fees and those hardware fees from those two vendors to do the other cost comparisons. Okay, why not use your product pricing? Well, because we want you to call us and get our product pricing. But I can tell you that our software products and our hardware products are typically anywhere from 20 to 40, and in real large hotels, even 50% less expensive than the industry leaders right now. And that may be it on questions. Any other questions? If not, I'll wrap this up. I thank everyone for attending. We will edit out the fiascos from the beginning and get this up on the website within a few days. So thank you for coming. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, 800-245-9933. Press 1 for sales and 1 again for PhoneSuite sales, or just email sales@phonesuite.com.